Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back in again today. It's Colleen and we're here to talk about archival materials in comic art production, some history about comic art production, and some updates on my upcoming personal appearances, which I'm sure you've guessed aren't going to happen. But we have a great question from Patreon supporter Greg Morrow, and I asked a question a few months ago about repairing a paste up on some old Legion of Superheroes art. Since your interest in archival quality materials, I figured you'd have an opinion. Let's see, if you're open now, maybe it's a subject you can tackle. Thanks. Yes, it is, and I'm happy to have lots of answers for you. And fortunately, this is a really easy problem to fix because back in the day, when comic art was being produced 20, 30, 40 years ago, people weren't necessarily very careful with how they did production on their art. They'd use markers, they'd use rubber cement to glue things together, they'd use really crappy masking tape to tape their art together, and a lot of original art over the years has deteriorated pretty badly. But nowadays, if you need to fix something, it's easy to find acid-free glues, and you can even get acid-free rubber cement now, which they didn't have when I was a young artist. You were kind of screwed in that department. But one of the best ways to find acid-free archival materials for making minor repairs on comic art is to just go to the scrapbooking or craft section of most art supply stores. They have these glue sticks, and this one is acid-free, photo-safe, very easy to find these things, super easy to find them online. You can find them on Amazon or just about anywhere. And if you've got a word balloon that's peeling up or a paste-on panel, just use this stuff. It's pretty safe. Elmer's glue, believe it or not, is pretty safe. And like I said, now they have acid-free rubber cement. I prefer not to use it. I'd rather use something like this. The one drawback to a lot of the stuff that's being sold as archival or acid-free is it isn't necessarily all it's cracked up to be. They'll often have this little note down here going conforms to ASTM D4236, which is, safety standards, but that kind of makes people think it's got some sort of industry standard for what archival means, and it doesn't. Archival is sort of a weasel word in art supplies. There's no general standard for testing this kind of stuff. You kind of have to take the manufacturer's word for it. If you're really worried about using super safe stuff on your art, you might want to go to a website like Gaylord to find archival quality materials that conservators use. I wouldn't worry about some of this stuff too much. It's really easy to find acid-free or archival glue. So if you've got a word balloon or a panel that's peeling up, okay. And if you've got some old masking tape on the back of some art that's kind of peeling up and you want to replace it with something, this is artist tape. Again, this is easy to get. You can get it on Amazon, all kinds of places. I don't think it has as much tack as some of the hardcore tapes that aren't good for your original art, but it's often made out of cloth. The adhesive is safer for the art, and if you need to remove the old tape, sometimes just hitting it with heat, like a hairdryer, will help that old tape come up, and you can take that off and replace it with something a little bit safer. If you've got really expensive original art, I wouldn't try to do it myself. I'd take it to a conservator and see what they can do about maybe removing the older tapes. Some of those old tapes tore art up big time, caused a lot of discoloration, a lot of acid damage, but this stuff should be okay. If your art isn't too expensive, do it yourself. It's not that hard. If your art is really expensive, preserve it, take it to a conservator. There are comic pages now getting 6 figures a whack. I wouldn't take the risk of trying to do a repair myself. I'd take it to a specialist. They're not hard to find online, but in the meantime, do it yourself. It's not that hard. Now, I thought I would give you guys a look at some stuff I have in my own collection that could use a little TLC. This is an original page, or a double page spread, by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. It's dated 1983. It's from New Teen Titans number 11. And is this not the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen? Jericho is one of my all-time favorite characters, and this page is a holy grail page for me. I used to collect pages with Jericho and Element Lad, so you know, many years ago when I wasn't doing very well and I kind of went broke, I had to sell a lot of them, but I kept this one. This is Jericho's origin. It's just a gorgeous, beautiful page, and you can see how some of the word balloons here are popping off. You can see how this paste-on caption is popping off. The back of the art is taped with, this is definitely not an archival tape. This might have to be removed at some point. But from the front, you can also see some adhesive here, and here, and this has caused some acid damage. Now, these are going to be super easy to fix. I'm just going to use some glue stick and pop these back on. But over here and here, these were actually from, this damage is from registration marks, and these are these sort of crosshairs that you sometimes see on original art, and you can see them in the blue line here. This sort of strange little crosshair mark. This is a necessary mark for printing and production purposes. When art is printed, shot at the photographer, it's shot to be run on different plates, and all of these plates have to line up. Each plate is a different color, and the crosshairs have to line up in the production process so that the blue, the yellow, the red, and the black plate can fit together perfectly, and you don't get that weird little ghost line around the image of the art. Now, I don't know anybody that uses these anymore, but these are my X marks, and well, they're not really mine, they're mine now, but these belonged to Marie Severin. These are from her studio, and you can see the printer engraving marks that people used to put on art, and they peel right off. And of course, they're not good for your art. You see that this is turning pretty brown and gross. I'm sort of keeping this for historical and teaching purposes, not because I use them. But that's what's causing the discoloration on the art here, is these old registration marks. And you can see how some of them have popped right off, and yet the discoloration remains. That's acid damage. It's you know, not super horrible. This can probably be cleaned off and fixed. I haven't tried to do it yet, obviously, but there you have it. This is what that looks like. And again, if you want to remove this kind of stuff, like this old tape on the back, you can use a hairdryer or a heat gun, and it should pop right off, and it shouldn't be any trouble for you to remove that. But one of the interesting things about this page, and I really love having it, is it's like a little history lesson in comic art all in one piece. Now over here on this side of the double page spread, this lettering on these captions is done directly on the original art, but on this side it's all paste on. I don't know what happened here. I guess somebody did a rewrite, or the page came in later, or what, I don't know. But there's no lettering underneath these captions and balloons, so I'm not really sure what was going on there during production of this book. But back in the day, these would either be done using photocopies, you know, you'd have the lettering and then the lettering would be photocopied onto something, or photostats. If you really wanted it to be super crystal clear, you'd use a photostat. And the photostat wouldn't necessarily be glued on. These have definitely been, you know, I can feel the glue under there. These have definitely been glued on. But back in the day, especially if it was a photostat, they would have been applied with wax. This is a Rolatac. I don't even know anybody who has one of these anymore. But wax would be put into a reservoir, it would heat up, and then you would roll it onto your photostat, and the waxed photostat, while it was hot, could be placed down, And then if you needed to move it, you could pick it up and move it, and the glue wouldn't damage your art or anything. It would usually stick pretty well, but over time the wax tended to become brittle, and a lot of the stuff put onto art or onto paste ups would pop up over time. So here's another relic from history, a Rollotac. My home Rollotac machine. I use this a lot when I was self-publishing. And here's another little walk through history. For those of you who've heard the terms cyan, yellow, magenta, black, CMYK, or RGB, now I stated that, this would be red, green, blue, black when printed, but in reality it would be cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. There's a long explanation having to do with color theory why cyan, yellow, and magenta instead of red, green, and blue. We're not going to get into that today, but take my word for it. It's cyan and magenta and not blue and red. So you're looking at a transparency. This is from an old issue of Distant Soil, and you can see the little marks here, the little registration marks. Let's get those in there. And these all have to line up on each plate. So here is the black plate. K actually stands for key, not black, but who cares? It's black. And cyan and magenta and yellow. That's how it's done. And they all have to line up perfectly, hence the registration marks. So that's what it's for. Ancient history there, folks. I don't even know if they do this anymore, but you've seen it with your own eyes. Kind of cool. Yay. Okay. So let's see. I think we went through all of that already. Yay. That didn't hurt. Okay. Great. Let's see what else. I have a question from Doc Butcher, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly because you've asked me a question before, and I'd be really embarrassed if I'm not honoring you by pronouncing your name correctly. So please do come to me and let me know if I'm botching it. So Greg, I hope I've answered your question adequately. Again, super easy. If not, get back to me and I'll see what else I can do for you. Okay, now we're on to Doc's question. With the pandemic that will be affecting any Comic-Cons you might go to, do you have concerns about the virus with your past medical history? Keep safe, and thanks again. First off, I want to thank you most sincerely for your very kind and thoughtful question. My sincere hopes for you and your family, all your loved ones, everybody listening out there, please take this seriously and stay safe. And the answer is no conventions for me for a while. I didn't have any U.S. shows lined up. I have been asked to attend a number of U.S. shows, but I'm thinking I may not do any this year. If things don't improve measurably, if health measures aren't in place where I have a reasonable expectation if I go out, I'm not going to bring something back that's going to affect a vulnerable family member, I'm not going anywhere. I live on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, and we can stay here a really long time. And we have a generator, we have freezers full of food. I'm growing my own food on the porch this year. I used to grow a lot of my food in the yard, but I've had it with the deer. The minute you say you've had problems with deer, 100 people come forward and say, if you just do this, the deer will go away. Not true. Our deer fear nothing, and you put blood out there or whatever you put out there, they don't care. They eat everything in sight, and they come right up on the porch. They are utterly fearless. But we do have a second floor deck, so I usually have a flower garden up there, so instead of growing flowers, it's all vegetables, so yeah. But I don't think it's safe to go to any Comic-Cons. I really don't. It's not that I'm as worried for me as I am worried about bringing something back to the house. My vulnerable family members tend to weather flu seasons better than I do, but this year when I got the flu, they ended up getting the flu about a week later, and they got less severe case than I did, which is really irritating, but they always do. Now, yeah, I do have autoimmune disorder, so I'm getting conflicting advice. One specialist tells me that because my immune system overreacts to everything, I may be in a better position to fight off certain diseases, but at the same time, uh, that is also likely to trigger something called a cytokine response, which you don't want. It would really suck if I got that. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But I was supposed to be in Greece working with refugees in 2 months. We're not going to do that. And I was supposed to be in Australia for about a month, and I don't think that's happening either. So it's disappointing, but it's much harder for other people out there than it is for me. I'm pretty lucky in where I live. I'm lucky in my family. I'm more worried about my family than I am about me. We've got first responders in our family. We've got people with autoimmune disorders that are far more serious than mine, and I just don't want to bring anything home. I don't want to bring anything to the house. So, so there you go. But that's a really kind question, and I truly appreciate you asking. So thank you so much for your comments today. I'm keeping this video kind of short, and I'm going to post more often but shorter videos. I know these things are kind of a kind of a marathon to answer. And I've got some cool projects coming up, as you know. I've got a project for Marvel. I'm doing something I haven't been able to announce yet, and I think I mentioned not too long ago. Where is it? I don't know if I don't think it's been announced yet. I guess I can't talk about that. But I must say it is a little weird working on the clock for Imogen Top Cow in today's climate. It's a book about a pandemic, and here we have a pandemic. It is so weird. I'm on the last issue, and it really creeped me out for a few, for a few days. It made it a little hard to get back to it. You know, fictional disaster is a lot more fun than real disaster. People are pretty sick and they're pretty worried, and I just trying to stay positive. So I'm going to be posting things for free on my Patreon, as well as posting stuff exclusively for Patreon supporters. And I'm going to try to post things that will help you mellow out, maybe give you things to do online. And I'll try to stay positive and post some fun things, talk about comic art production, fun books to read, and do that sort of thing. Try not to be too much of a downer, but I think convention season's kind of out for me. Hope this thing gets taken care of as quickly as possible, not just for my sake, but for everybody else's. And stay safe out there. Thank you for your question. Thanks for tuning in today. Bye-bye.